She was wiping down the front desk when the CEO overheard her switch between Russian, Arabic, and Japanese like a native. What happened next stunned the entire headquarters. At Arcadia Logistics in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, no one paid much attention to the night cleaning crew, not out of rudeness, just habit. They came in after hours, emptied trash bins, polished the glass walls, and faded into the background like white noise. It was Tuesday morning, and the marble-floored lobby buzzed with consultants tapping phones, interns juggling coffee orders, and department heads exchanging pre-meeting gossip. Miles Hensley, the 51-year-old CEO, was making his usual walk from the parking structure to the 14th floor executive wing when he heard something that made him stop mid-step. A voice clear, articulate, and cutting through the lobby chatter in flawless Russian. He paused, not because it was Russian, but because of who was speaking it. He looked around, expecting to see one of the international strategy leads, but then he saw her. A woman in a Navy custodial uniform, her braids tied neatly behind her head, was standing next to the touchscreen building directory. She was gently guiding an elderly man with a foreign visitor badge and a map clutched in his hand. She spoke softly, her tone confident and warm, guiding him toward the proper elevator bank. Miles narrowed his eyes. He'd passed her dozens of times in late-night walks through the halls. Always quiet, always courteous. Never once did she speak unless spoken to. He didn't even know her name. But now, in the span of 30 seconds, he watched her seamlessly finish the conversation in Russian, then turn to a technician asking about room access and respond to him in Arabic. A courier approached with a confused look, and a clipboard, without skipping a beat, she switched to Japanese. "Arigatou gozaimasu," the man mumbled, surprised and grateful. She nodded politely and turned back toward her cart. Miles Hensley stood frozen, not in disbelief, but in a dawning realization. He had built a career on global expansion, hired expensive interpreters, paid consultants for cultural fluency training. Yet here in his own lobby, the most skilled linguist he'd encountered all year had been cleaning baseboards and vacuuming conference rooms. He stepped forward this time, less CEO and more human. "Excuse me." She turned, startled, but steady. "Yes, sir, that was Russian, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir." "And Arabic Japanese?" She nodded. "Also Hindi Korean." "French, and I read ancient Greek, though I don't get much chance to use that." He blinked. "You speak how many languages?" 11 fluently, she said, without a hint of pride. Just matter of fact. He stared, trying to reconcile the facts. "A custodiano, a woman named, what's your name, Camille Rhodes." "Ms. Rhodes, are you available for a few minutes?" She lifted her eyebrows slightly. "Now, yes. I'd like to speak with you in my office." He caught the hesitation in her expression. Not fear, exactly, just that ingrained hesitation people carry when they've grown used to being overlooked. Slowly, she nodded. "All right." Miles Hensley pressed the elevator button and held the door open as she stepped inside. In the confined quiet of the elevator, silence settled like mist. "I've worked here for 9 years," she said suddenly, as they ascended to the top floor. He turned toward her, surprised. "Never thought I'd be asked upstairs." He gave her a subtle, almost apologetic smile. You'd be surprised how quickly things can change. What he didn't know then was just how much would change for both of them. The elevator chimed. Camille stepped out first, her shoes nearly silent on the polished marble that lined the executive corridor. It smelled like leather wood polish and wealth. If luxury had a scent, this was it. The CEO's assistant at reception looked up startled to see the janitor walking beside him. Hensley offered no explanation, just nodded for her to buzz them through. Inside the sleek, glass-walled corner office, he gestured to the seat across from his desk. "Please have a seat." Camille sat, hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes scanning the space, not with awe, just quiet observation. A large digital map pulsed on the wall behind him, pins blinking across continents. To the right, a coffee set, a black-and-white photo of two teenagers, and a framed award from a Tokyo conference sat untouched. Miles leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Rhodes, I'll be honest, I didn't plan on having this conversation today." She gave a quiet nod, her posture steady, her expression unreadable. "But I just watched you switch between 3 languages like it was muscle memory. And I have to ask, how does someone like you end up here wiping down windows?" For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes flicked to the skyline outside, then back to him. "You got time for the truth. I wouldn't have asked otherwise." She exhaled, rubbing her palms together as though she were warming up the story. "I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. Only child. My dad worked construction. My mom was a home health aide. We didn't have much but school. That was non-negotiable. I got a full scholarship to UNC. Charlotte studied linguistics. I was halfway through grad school when my mom's health tanked." She paused. "I dropped everything, came back to care for her. Dad passed from a stroke the same year. I got pregnant, the guy bailed. Bills stacked up. I took whatever job I could find. Groceries, daycares, night shifts at hotels. Eventually, someone here offered me custodial work. It was overnight, which meant I could be there to pick my daughter up from school. That's how I ended up at Arcadia." Miles said nothing, just listened. No blinking, no interruptions, but the languages she added. I never stopped. Borrowed books from the library, streamed lectures, translated subtitles in my head to stay sharp. It's what keeps me grounded. Makes me feel like I haven't disappeared." Her voice was calm, not bitter, not rehearsed, just honest. No one ever asked before she said. People see the uniform and make assumptions. That word, assumptions, hung heavy in the air. Miles leaned back, the weight of her story pressing on his chest. Camille wasn't angling for pity or a handout. She was offering the one thing most people never gave freely: truth. "You ever think about doing something else?" he asked. She gave a quiet shrug. "Sometimes, but it's hard to dream when rent's due." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of questions, of realizations, of possibilities. Miles Hensley just nodded. Wesley Grant reached for his notebook and scribbled down a few lines. "What are you writing?" Camille asked, calm as ever, but with a touch of curiosity now. He looked up at her. "Ideas," he said simply. But one idea in particular had already taken root, and it wasn't small. The conversation lingered with him the rest of the day. Even while crunching numbers in quarterly budget meetings and fielding calls from European vendors, Wesley's mind kept looping back to that moment in the lobby, to Camille Rhodes. The way she had effortlessly named 9 languages, no drama, no performance. Just quiet, brilliant fluency. That kind of ability didn't show up in HR reports. It came from years of effort, an obsession with learning, and a soul deep enough to absorb the world's stories in any tongue. At 3:40 p.m., he stepped into the elevator and punched the button for the sublevel. He needed to see something for himself. Down there, the fluorescent lighting hummed, and the air was heavier with industrial cleaner, and the faint scent of coffee from the break room. Past the rows of janitorial carts and supply shelves, he found her in the supply closet, restocking microfiber cloths. "Can I interrupt?" he asked from the doorway. She turned, slightly startled. "You came down here?" He gave a half-smile. "Couldn't stop thinking about our conversation." Then he stepped in. "I have a favor to ask." She wiped her hands on her uniform. "What kind of favor?" "There's a meeting upstairs with a team from our Sao Paulo branch. Our translator canceled last minute. Could you help?" She hesitated for only a breath. "Portuguese?" "Yes, I can do that." Minutes later, they walked into conference room 5B. 4 Brazilian execs sat restlessly checking emails. Camille stepped forward with quiet confidence and greeted them in Portuguese, her tone warm and measured. Wesley watched something shift in the room. Shoulders relaxed. Phones disappeared into pockets. Eye contact returned. Camille wasn't just translating. She was connecting, building bridges. One exec made a quick joke Camille volleyed back with one of her own, and laughter echoed through the glass walls. Wesley didn't catch the punchline, but he caught the meaning. After 20 minutes, the meeting wrapped up. One of the visitors turned to Wesley. "She's better than the last 3 professionals we've worked with. Where'd you find her?" He looked at Camille, who was quietly collecting used coffee cups from the table. "Right here," he said. In the hallway, he caught up to her. "You ever work as a translator before?" She shook her head. "No certifications. Just helped people out where I could, hospitals, public offices, immigration centers. Never had time for school. My daughter needed me more." Wesley nodded. "Where is she now? She's 26. ICU nurse in Phoenix. Paid her own way through college. Stubborn like her mom." They both smiled. And for a moment, it wasn't CEO and janitor, it was just 2 parents sharing pride. Back on the lower level, Camille swiped back in for the rest of her shift. 2 more floors to clean before clock out. But before she turned down the corridor, she looked over her shoulder. "I didn't do anything special today." He raised an eyebrow. "That's not how it looked to me." She offered a quiet smile and walked off. That night, Wesley sat in his car longer than usual before pulling away from the office garage. He thought about company growth, the DEI reports, and all the recruiting dollars spent looking overseas for fresh talent. All that effort, and yet the most overlooked brilliance had been right under his nose. The next morning at 7:03 a.m., Camille's badge buzzed earlier than usual. She'd just finished mopping the east lobby when her supervisor, Carla, tapped her gently on the shoulder, not annoyed but definitely with something unusual in her eyes. "Hey, Camille," said Carla, her voice a little uncertain as she peeked into the janitorial supply room. "Mr. Grant wants to see you again." Camille blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Carla shook her head. "Didn't say. Just told me to send you up." Camille wiped her hands on a towel and headed upstairs, retracing the same route she'd taken the day before. But everything felt different now. This time, people noticed her. Heads turned. A few employees offered nods, others whispered. Even the usually unreadable security guard gave her a polite, knowing smile. When she reached the executive floor, Wesley Grant, CEO of Langford Solutions, stood by the floor-to-ceiling window with a cup of black coffee in his hand, eyes scanning the Los Angeles skyline. "Come in," he said without turning. She stood near the doorway, unsure until he faced her. "I've been thinking," he said, setting his mug down on a coaster, "about how much talent gets wasted because no one looks in the right places. People don't get overlooked because they're not smart, but because no one ever takes the time to see them." Camille stayed quiet. She wasn't one to be swayed by nice words. She'd heard speeches before. She needed action. "I want to create a role," he continued. "Something this company doesn't have, but should have had years ago. A global cultural coordinator." She raised an eyebrow. What now?" "Someone who can bridge language and cultural gaps with our international clients, vendors, partners. Someone who can translate not just words, but tone nuance expectations. You've already been doing that, Camille. You're fluent, patient, poised, and let's be honest, probably more equipped than half the people upstairs." Camille studied him carefully. "Is this for real?" "As real as I am standing here," he said. "I know you don't have a college degree, but I've seen you operate. You don't just speak languages, you connect people. You listen. You adapt. That's more valuable than a framed diploma." She shifted her stance. "Why me?" He looked her in the eye. "Because I saw you solve 3 different problems in 3 different languages in the span of 10 minutes. And because I'm done walking past brilliance just because it's wearing the wrong uniform." She crossed her arms, weighing it all. "You know what people are gonna say." He shrugged. "Let them." She let out a breath. I've never had a desk job, never had a title. You'll catch on fast. I don't exactly have a wardrobe for this kind of thing. HR will handle a clothing stipend. Camille chuckled. You really thought this through, huh? I'm trying. A long pause passed between them before she asked softly, what about the team downstairs? Who takes over my shift? Wesley smiled. Well, fill the role. But no one can replace you. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. This isn't charity. No, he said. It's overdue recognition. Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it. All right then. Let's see what I can do. They shook hands quietly, firmly. Not just an agreement. A beginning. By Wednesday morning, the whole office was buzzing. Camille Rhodes, the night custodian, had been promoted to an executive position. No one really knew the full story, only whispers that she spoke a dozen languages, that the CEO himself had picked her, that she might have some kind of secret past, maybe military, maybe government, maybe both. The rumors bounced from office to hallway to Slack channels. Some were genuinely happy for her whispering about time. Others raised eyebrows. In the second-floor break room, two marketing associates hunched over their protein bowls. Just saying, one whispered. I've got a master's in international relations, and I've been waiting 2 years for a shot like that. A promotion, one voice, whispered in disbelief. Camille was cleaning bathrooms last week. Across the table in the employee lounge, her coworker shrugged. Maybe she knows something we don't. Oh, come on, the first one replied, rolling her eyes. It's just Grant trying to look woke, checking some corporate box. That same sentiment started trickling through boardroom banter and private Slack messages. The confusion wasn't about Camille herself, it was about the path she'd taken. No one was used to someone skipping rungs on the corporate ladder, especially not someone from the basement. Camille felt the shift the moment she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor of Langford Solutions headquarters in downtown LA. It wasn't grand, just a simple desk, a green plant by the window, and a computer she hadn't even powered on yet. But to her, it might as well have been a different universe. After onboarding, she asked HR if she could keep her old night shift uniform. Not to wear, just as a reminder. That afternoon, she had her first meeting with Victor Leclerc, the head of international operations. He walked in stiffly, a clipboard tucked under his eyes, scanning the room without warmth. He didn't shake her hand, didn't sit down. So you're the new liaison, he said flatly, as if announcing a typo. Camille met his stare. That's what I'm told. Any experience working in corporate international relations? Only from the outside looking in, she said with a calm smile. Victor didn't laugh. We've got reports from Rome contract snags in Dubai and a vendor issue in Sao Paulo. You think you can handle all that? She stood. You'll need a few hours to review the files. But yes, he dropped the folder on her desk like a challenge and walked out. Later that evening, Wesley Grant stopped by her office. How's day one treating you? She leaned back in her chair with a slow exhale. I've had worse. Victor give you a hard time. He doesn't scare me. Wesley smiled. Didn't think he would. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why now, why me? You could have just handed me a bonus and walked away. He leaned on the door frame. Because I saw myself in you. She raised an eyebrow. You were a janitor? No, he chuckled. But I came from nowhere. Grew up in a one-light town in Kansas. My dad worked at a repair shop. I worked 3 jobs to finish school. And everywhere I went, someone looked at me like I didn't belong in the room. She nodded slowly. And now you're the one deciding who gets in. Exactly? Camille glanced at the folder Victor had left behind. I'll be honest, I'm nervous. Good, Wesley said. Means you give a damn. There are people who won't like this, she said. They'll get over it or they won't. Either way, we keep moving. He paused before heading out. You've got a real story, Camille. And now you've got a real platform. Use it. After he left, she sat quietly for a moment, soaking in the room. She thought of the years she'd cried on her lunch break in empty stairwells, the birthdays missed, the long shifts, the overlooked promotions, the invisible hours that added up to this moment. She opened the drawer and gently placed her old janitor's badge inside, not to forget, but to remember exactly what she'd survived to get here. By the end of the week, her nameplate was affixed beside her door in sleek black letters, Camille Rhodes, Cultural Liaison, Global Affairs. It was official, real, permanent. The announcement went out in a company-wide email Friday morning, sent by Grant himself. It was brief, pointed, and unapologetic. It outlined Camille's new role, her language fluency, and her background not as a pity story, but as a declaration of merit. She wasn't a diversity hire. She was the right hire. Still, the buzz didn't die down. Some senior staff kept their distance, but others changed their tune after watching her in action. Camille navigated client meetings with fluency the translation software couldn't touch. She corrected mistakes in old contracts that had cost the company thousands. And she did it all without flash or ego. She didn't try to prove anything. She just showed up and did the job, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, Camille was invited to a meeting with a business delegation from Morocco. Langford Solutions. North Africa expansion had stalled for months, caught in a web of cultural missteps and unclear communication. She walked into the glass-walled conference room in a soft cream blazer and charcoal slacks, sat down confidently, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The shift in the room was immediate. Shoulders relaxed, eyebrows lifted, and people leaned in. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you feel seen. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan executives approached her quietly. He placed his hand on his chest in a traditional gesture of gratitude. "No one's ever spoken to us like that," he said, eyes sincere. "Not in our language, not with respect." Camille simply nodded. "You matter," she said. "That's all." By midweek, Wesley Grant made another quiet but powerful move. He had the company's main training room renamed. The plaque on the door once labeled Training Room Awaz replaced with a new one. Simple brushed steel, 3 words, The Rhodes Room. No press release. No cake. Just a sign. A sign that said something was different now. That afternoon, Wesley lingered outside the newly named space as a group of summer interns passed through. He overheard one whisper, "Who's that?" A senior staffer replied, "Someone who reminded us that greatness doesn't always wear a blazer." Later that day, Camille found a sealed envelope on her desk. No name, no logo, just her first name handwritten in block letters. Inside was a short note: "I used to think I'd be invisible forever. But today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just impact. She stared at it for a long time, her throat tightening. No tears came. She didn't need them. That note made one thing clear: this job wasn't just a job. It was a door, and doors have a way of making some people uncomfortable. By Thursday, the pushback arrived. Camille was summoned to the 17th floor, not by Grant, but by someone higher, Eleanor Craig, a senior board member flown in from Dallas. She'd been with the company since the late 80s. Tailored gray suit, diamond brooch, reputation for ending careers with a question. Camille stepped into the room. Eleanor didn't look up as she gestured toward the chair. "Have a seat." Camille sat. Eleanor tapped a thick folder. "Ms. Rhodes, I've reviewed your file. No degree, no executive background, no certifications." "That's correct. You were on the night shift cleaning staff 3 weeks ago." "I was." Eleanor folded her hands, finally meeting Camille's gaze. "Explain how someone with your RSUM is now representing our company in high-level international matters." Camille didn't blink. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultures. I've corrected vendor agreements, revived stalled projects in Morocco, and helped finalize a Brazilian deal that's been frozen for 2 quarters. You believe this company should be run on instinct and charm? Eleanor asked coldly. No, Mom, Camille replied. I believe it should be run on results. That stopped Eleanor. Just for a second. I don't need to be liked, Camille added, but I am needed, and I deliver. Eleanor stood and slowly closed the folder. You're a gamble. Camille's tone softened. My whole life has been. After the meeting, Camille didn't go back to her office. Instead, she walked out of the tower and sat on a bench across the street. The late afternoon light reflected off the glass windows of the building she now worked in and once cleaned. And for a long time, she just sat there, watching it shine. For over a decade, Camille Rhodes had walked past the towering glass of Langford Solutions, wearing her gray custodial uniform, pushing carts filled with glove sprays and rags, wondering if anyone even saw her. Now they did, and not everyone was happy about it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. Hey, Mama, Jordan answered cheerfully. Everything okay? Camille paused, then nodded to herself. Yeah, just needed to hear your voice. You sure? I'm sure. They talked for a few minutes. Groceries. The rescue dog Jordan had just adopted a new movie she wanted to stream. Nothing heavy, but the sound of her daughter's laughter steadied Camille's breath. After they hung up, Camille sat for a moment on the park bench across from the office tower. Then she smoothed her blouse, and walked straight back into the building. Up the elevator to the 12th floor. Her floor. By the next morning, whispers of her tense meeting with board member Eleanor Craig had made the rounds. People expected her to retreat, maybe even quit. But instead, Camille showed up early, spoke confidently at the morning team meeting, and later took a client call from Munich fluent German. No translator, no hesitation. Calm, sharp, unbothered. That afternoon, someone left a note on the dry erase board outside her office door. 3 words, handwritten. We see you. No name, no fanfare, just recognition that quietly meant everything. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. People from all levels of the company started seeking her out, not just for her language skills, but for advice, mentorship, direction. Camille became the voice people trusted before they made big presentations. She encouraged interns, guided managers, and always made time without making anyone feel small. One intern, a quiet young man named Bao, stopped by nervously one afternoon. How did you learn all those languages? He asked. Camille smiled gently. 1 word at a time. Same way you will. She wasn't just doing her job anymore. She was changing the culture, silently, steadily. One afternoon, Wesley Grant popped into the break room while she stirred a cup of tea. I've been hearing good things, he said. She gave a dry smile, trying to ignore the bad ones. You're making waves. Is that a compliment around here? He laughed. It means you're doing something right. They stood there quietly for a moment before he added, I've been thinking. We need a training pipeline, something to help discover the next Camille Rhodes. I know there are more people like you here. They just haven't been seen. She nodded. There are. And yes, he'll help you build it. Already got ideas scribbled in a notebook. By month's end, a new program launched. Voice Inside Camille's idea, brought to life with Wesley's backing. A talent initiative to train employees in overlooked roles, janitors, cafeteria workers, warehouse assistants, offering them access to language training, leadership, mentoring, and a spotlight they'd never been offered. It caught fire. Weeks later, Camille stood on a stage in Cincinnati speaking at a national logistics summit. Her story wasn't framed as inspirational fluff, it was a call to action. I was never just a janitor, she said to the crowd. I was fluent, I was capable, I was ready. But nobody ever looked long enough to see it. She let the silence sit, then added, so the next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what brilliance are you missing? The room erupted into a standing ovation. As she stepped off stage, a young man approached her misty-eyed. "My mom's a housekeeper. She speaks 5 languages." I used to feel embarrassed. Camille placed a hand gently on his arm. "Never be ashamed of where you come from. The only shame is choosing to stay blind to brilliance." She left the venue taller than she'd ever felt before, not because of the applause or the title on her office door, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit into that room. She brought her whole self with her, and that made all the difference. So remember this: never assume someone's worth based on a job title, a uniform, or the way they enter a room. Talent doesn't need permission. Intelligence wears no label. And sometimes brilliance walks by wearing a name tag and holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked or underestimated, keep going. And when the door opens, don't just walk in. Bring chairs, lots of them.